The motion highlights the role of the Assembly in preserving and protecting the environment and notes that in 1776, the British Parliament officially the 12th sitting of the Tobago House of Assembly for the 2017 to 2021 term will focus on the environment in a motion moved by the Leader of Assembly Business and Secretary for Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment, Councillor Kwesi Devines. The motion highlights the role of the Assembly in preserving and protecting the environment and notes that in 1776, the British Parliament officially declared the Main Ridge as a forest reserve. The motion requests the House to support the Executive Council in developing and adopting a Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan, where the Main Ridge Forest Reserve will be declared as the first designated protected area. As presiding officer, I invite you to join us this Thursday, the 22nd of February from 1:30 p.m., either in the public gallery or to view the sitting on Tobago Channel 5 or the Assembly Legislature's live YouTube and Facebook channels. We look forward to seeing you.
Papers.
Question number 37 by the, papers, the following papers by the Secretary of Finance and Economy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I have the privilege of tabling the Tobago House of Assembly's monthly budget report as at the end of December 2017.
Presentation of reports from Dispute Resolution Commission, select committees, questions to secretaries, questions for oral answer.
Question number 37 by the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 37 to the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment and the Leader of Assembly Business. At the 7th sitting of the Tobago House of Assembly, information about the short and long-term plans to treat with the coastal erosion affecting the shoreline from Roxborough to Kendall was requested. The coastal erosion continues, which places several homes and businesses at risk of being destroyed. Please provide an update on what has been done to treat with this critical issue since this matter was last raised in the House.
Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, as a small island developing state, Tobago is still very vulnerable to the effects of climate change, which include rising sea levels. We have noticed a significant incursion and erosion on the coastline throughout Tobago. Several red zones have been identified, including the Roxborough Argyle area, Crown Point, Pigeon Point, Milford Road, and Black Rock. Madam Presiding Officer, I'm pleased to announce that a note for the formation of the Coastal Zone Protection Unit of the Tobago House of Assembly has been brought before the Executive Council for consideration. I'm also pleased to announce that through the intervention and the diligent work of the Secretary for Finance and Economy, Assemblyman Joel Jack, the officials from my division have been able to meet with the IDE Inter-American Development Bank as we are seeking to secure funding for coastal protection work on the island. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Question number 38 by the Minority Leader to the Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and Economy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 38 to the Deputy. Right? According to the Ministry of Finance State Enterprise Performance Monitoring Manual, state enterprises are required to submit audited financial statements to the Minister of Finance within 4 months of their financial year end. These reports are to be laid in the Parliament and subsequently submitted to the Public Accounts and Enterprises Committee for consideration. The state enterprises under the Tobago House of Assembly include Eco Industrial Development Company of Tobago Limited, EDCOT, Tobago House of Assembly Venture Capital Equity Fund Company Limited, Tobago Cassava Products Limited, Fish Processing Company of Tobago Limited, FIPCOT, Milford Road Esplanade Limited, Tobago Information Technology Limited, Tobago Cold Storage and Warehouse Facility Limited, Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute, Pigeon Point Heritage Park Company Limited, Tobago Project Development Authority Limited. Please indicate if each of these companies have submitted the yearly audited financials and the most recent submitted for each company.
Secretary of Finance and Economy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. As it relates to companies owned by the Tobago House of Assembly, each company is required to submit their annual financial statements to their respective divisions through their line secretaries. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, the Executive Council recently realigned several THA enterprises under various divisions, thereby reducing the number of companies under the purview of the Division of Finance and Economy from 8 to 3. As such, Madam Presiding Officer, I report on the status of those Tobago House of Assembly's companies under the purview of the Division of Finance and the Economy, and for companies which I have the information as requested by the Minority Leader. I wish to advise that maybe a subsequent question or questions can be posed to the respective secretaries under whose purviews those companies fall. But as it relates to EDCOT, the Eco Industrial Development Company of Tobago, the Tobago Information Technology Limited, the Milford Road Esplanade Company Limited, and the Tobago House of Assembly Venture Capital Equity Fund Company Limited. I'm pleased to report, Madam Presiding Officer, and to inform this Honorable House that the necessary financial statements for these companies are up to date as at the financial year 2016, and preparations are underway to have the audited financial statements completed for the recent 2017 financial year. As it relates to the Tobago Project Development Company, I am informed that this is a virgin company and this was never effective. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Follow-up question. Madam Presiding Officer, this is a house for question and answers. The Secretary of Finance is the appropriate person to answer this question. I ask my question specifically to the Secretary of Finance, who has the overarching responsibility of looking into...
Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I'm just stating the question here. So I want the question to be answered as it is asked by the Secretary of Finance.
Secretary of Finance.
Madam Presiding Officer and the member should so be guided. He's premising his statement on the manual for state enterprises of the Ministry of Finance. I answered the question as to what obtains or pertains to enterprises under the purview of the Tobago House of Assembly. And I answered the question of the minority leader as stated. And I gave certain recommendations. I would advise him, therefore, to heed my advice in terms of where he could obtain the necessary information. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Question number 39 by the minority leader. I don't know, in the absence. You would like to say something? Go ahead.
Madam Presiding Officer, in the absence of the Chief Secretary, I'm asking that the question be deferred to the next sitting so that he can appropriately answer the question posed.
Accept.
Just for clarity, each person within the minority council is allowed to ask 3 questions. Given the fact that one of the questions has already been deferred to the next meeting, we want to be reassured or be given guidance as to whether or not the number of questions for the next meeting could go beyond the 3 questions each, knowing that we would have borrowed some questions from this meeting.
I would be able to give you the ruling by the end of the session, the sitting. So question number 39 and number 40 will be deferred in the absence of the Chief Secretary being here to answer. Question number 41 by the member for Palatuvia Lansumi Speyside to the Secretary of Tourism, Culture and Transportation.
Question number 41. The immediate past Secretary with responsibility for tourism in September 2015 announced that there will be the original Mainridge Canopy Tour to begin at the Reserves Reception Center and run to Gilpin Trace Trailhead. The announced 1.5-kilometer zip line was to give visitors fresh views of part of the 4,000-hectare tropical forest, and a grand opening was scheduled for November 14, 2015. It was estimated then that over $500,000 US was to go into creating this tour. To date, this project has not materialized. Can the current Secretary for Tourism, Culture and Transportation give this House, A, an update on the status of this project, B, the total amount of money spent by the THA, if any, on this project, and C, an indication of whether or not this current Executive Council is desirous of continuing with this said zipline project.
Secretary of Tourism, Culture and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I am asking that the answers to this question be deferred to the next sitting, as the officers that were involved in this project are no longer employed at the division, and to ensure that accurate information is disseminated, the necessary research would have to be done.
Question number 42 to the Deputy Chief Secretary by the member for Palatuvia Lansumi Speyside.
Question number 42 to the Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy. As it relates to the financial standing of the Tobago House of Assembly, please provide this House with the following: a statement on the cash balance of all bank accounts of the Tobago House of Assembly, including the fund account and/or contingency fund, as at December 2016 and December 2017. A statement on the indebtedness of the THA in terms of rent, contractual obligations, and other financial liabilities, and what is the net worth of the THA?
Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The allocation to the Tobago House of Assembly for fiscal 2018 total $2.19 billion, disaggregated $1.86 billion for recurrent expenditure and $316 million for the development program. As at February 21st, 2018, the Assembly received a total of $845.5 million from the Ministry of Finance and the Economy and collected approximately $53.9 million in tax revenue on behalf of the government, of which $32.9 million was netted off against our 2018 appropriations. The funding to the Tobago House of Assembly today, therefore, is $845.5 million, representing approximately 38.8% of the total allocation. Madam Presiding Officer, the expenditure date of the Assembly as at January 31st, 2018, I know you asked for December, but I'm hoping that a more up-to-date or precise information would suffice. Total $610.6 million, disaggregated $548.4 million for recurrent expenditure, $62.2 million for development program. Excluded from these figures are outstanding commitments or debts of $27.1 million for recurrent expenditure and $10.8 million for development program expenditure, resulting in total outstanding commitments of $37.9 million, Madam Presiding Officer, at the end of January 31st, 2018. Madam Presiding Officer, the balance brought forward in the contingencies account at the end of fiscal 2016-17 total $17.13 million. To date, $15.19 million of this sum has been expended, and additionally, the total unspent balance as at the end of fiscal 2016-17 was $88.1 million, resulting in a total of $89.93 million in available funding under the contingencies account for urgent or unforeseen expenditure for this fiscal year. Madam Presiding Officer, in addition to the commitments that I listed earlier in my statement, the Tobago House of Assembly honors its monthly payment of $1.35 million as per the Bolt Agreement for the construction of the Division of Agriculture's administrative building.
Is the Secretary certain that that's all in terms of our level of indebtedness, and that accounts for the total net worth of the THA?
Madam Presiding Officer, as per our monthly expenditure report for January, and as per the other reports that I alluded to earlier, and as the member opposite is aware that this statement will be tabled in the House, and this is the source document from which information was taken.
We move on. Question number 43 by the Minority Councillor to the Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy.
Good day. The company JAW and Associates has invoiced the division with responsibility for finance on several occasions. Please provide A, the number of payments, B, the specific purpose for each payment, and C, the specific amounts of each payment made to JAW Associates between January 21st, 2013 and January 23rd, 2018.
Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. As part of my response to this question, I just want to read into the records, Madam Presiding Officer, section 1.5 of my budget statement for fiscal 2015, page 2, that was read in this Honorable House on Monday 23rd June 2014. And it states, in keeping true to the mandate given to us this year, and for the first time we undertook to return to the people of Tobago in the form of a Tobago House of Assembly budget survey to ask their opinion on the budget, what was important to them, or which impacted their lives and the lives of their families. We consulted the people on what their priorities were for the next fiscal year. Some 1,200 persons from throughout Tobago were interviewed by an independent surveyor. The responses we received, combined with all our other consultations, informed us in shaping the priorities in today's budget. Once again, I wish to thank the respondents and to give a commitment to continue to listen to the views of the people of Tobago. Our priorities continue to be shaped also by the imperatives as set out in the CDP. Our word is our bond, and we will continue to serve the people of Tobago in the spirit of transparency and accountability. Madam Presiding Officer, as it relates to the question posed by the councillor on the minority bench, the number of payments received by JW and Associates total 8 during the period as mentioned. As it relates to part B of the question, I intimated some of it in my earlier quotation of section 1.5 of the budget statement. But more precisely, Madam Presiding Officer, when I assumed office as Secretary of Finance in 2013, it was customary for the Assembly to utilize primarily budget consultations with certain stakeholders to solicit the views of Tobagonians to inform our annual budget statement. In an effort to deepen the democratic process and to solicit views from a wider cross-section of citizens resident in Tobago, and to have a more scientific approach to inform Assembly's policy, pre- and post-budget surveys were introduced to better inform the Assembly's overall budgetary process. Thus, these surveys were conducted to supplement the usual stakeholder budget consultation process. JW and Associates conducted pre- and post-budget surveys to inform the fiscal priorities for the Assembly's annual budgetary proposal. They also conducted Tobago House of Assembly's performance evaluation. This was intended also to collect data and to evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of all divisions of the Assembly in the utilization of financial resources and other resources, and as well as their project implementation rate across the Assembly. This, as it relates to Part C of the question, the specific amounts paid to JW and Associates in July 2015, $97,397.20 for pre-budget survey for fiscal 2016. 2015, pre-budget survey for fiscal 2016. In January 2016, $116,947.35 for a post-budget survey for fiscal 2016. In July 2016, $134,489.45 for pre-budget survey for fiscal 2017. In November 2016, $131,565.77 for a post-budget survey for fiscal 2017. In February 2017, the sum of $178,790.63 for a performance evaluation. In July 2017, $140,287.50 for a pre-budget survey for fiscal 2018. And in November 2017, $177,750 for a post-budget survey for fiscal 2018. And additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, a sum of $60,750 was paid as part of an additional exercise for the post-budget survey for fiscal 2018 as well.
Go ahead.
Are you then indicating on record, sir, that the pre- and post-budget surveys are the only surveys done by this company?
Madam Presiding Officer, reported as per the question answered and provided necessary information that I have on hand with respect to the file of GW and Associates.
Okay. In the absence of the Secretary of Health and Wellness and the Family Development, question 44 and question 45 will be deferred. That closes the question and answer period.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries. Personal explanation.
Members, I have before me two motions that have been put forward to refer to the Privileges Committee, and I will request, in the order in which I received them, for persons to stand and have a 5-minute statement presented as to why they wish this motion to be before the Privileges Committee. So I will begin with the Leader of Assembly Business, Councillor Kwesi DeVeeds.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I sought your leave for a matter to be referred to the Committee of Privileges, and I thank you for the opportunity. I sought your leave under Standing Order 36 to raise a matter directly concerning the privilege of this House, given the following. 1, The utterances of the Minority Council at a press conference dated Tuesday, 6 February 2018 and reported in part in the Thursday, 8 February 2018 edition of the Tobago Newsday. The councillor stated, "It is unfortunate that the Secretary for Health, Dr. Agatha Carrington, is the one who made the planning and policy mistakes." She went on, and after all of that, they then went and they are trying to punish the public servant. She further went on to say, "We think that this is an attack on public servants." The Minority Councillor went on, Madam Presiding Officer, to indicate this is just a plot to have workers afraid to speak up. These said utterances were made even after Councillor Dr. Agatha Carrington made a statement in the House on the 21st of December 2017. And these utterances are designed to bring into public odium and disrepute members of this House by imputing improper motives to these members contrary to their oaths taken in this House. 2, the fact that such utterances can undermine the integrity and dignity of this House, thereby subjecting this House and its members to public ridicule, disrespect, and a concomitant loss of confidence in the ability of this Honourable House to legitimately discharge its functions and obligations under law. Madam Presiding Officer, it is indeed disturbing when we can see in a newspaper at any time that members of this House, especially after providing personal explanations, were then accused of doing anything less than upholding the Constitution and law as was indicated in the oaths of office that we have taken. What is more disturbing, Madam Presiding Officer, is that these allegations speak to an attempt or an alleged attempt by members of this Honourable House, even after they would have addressed this House, Madam Presiding Officer, to undermine the legitimate independence outlined by the Constitution of the Public Service Commission. Further, Madam Presiding Officer, we have a situation where the statements and utterances by the Minority Councillor were again intended to bring harm to the good reputation of a member of this House who would have stood in this House and represented this House or spoken to this House, indicating each and every step that was taken to ensure that members of our workforce were paid. Madam Presiding Officer, it is indeed disturbing and disheartening that the member would choose to attempt to bring this House, this good House, into odium and disrespect and disrepute, and attempt to undermine the integrity of the words that are uttered in this House. Because, Madam Presiding Officer, we have a duty of care to ensure that we uphold the Constitution and law. And again, under the Constitution, Section 171 of the Constitution to be exact, the independence of the Public Service Commission is outlined. Therefore, it is public knowledge that the Tobago House of Assembly has no right, no responsibility to punish, employ, promote, or dismiss any members of the public service. So to impute that there is a plot is really to say that it is a deliberate attempt again to cause this public ridicule, disrespect, and for the public to lose confidence in the business of this House. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Honourable members, having only just received this motion this morning, I propose to deliver my ruling at the next sitting of the House. At the next motion for privilege will be moved by member for Palatuvia, Lansome Speyside, Assemblyman Fali Augustine.
Madam Presiding Officer, at the 11th plenary sitting of the Tobago House of Assembly, that was held on Thursday, January 25th, 2018, the Secretary for Health, Wellness and Family Development, Councillor Dr. Agatha Carrington, made damaging statements that can bring this Honorable House into odium and ridicule.
True.
The member, in a long rant, claimed to have full knowledge of the medical records of members of this House, boasted about her supposed ability to remove and or move around unnamed medical practitioners from health facilities in this country so they can't treat members opposite, and without being a medical doctor herself, sought to make diagnosis on the health of members opposite. Whether it is hearsay or not, true or false, the Secretary was irresponsible.
Yes.
And if she can indeed gather information through health records, she is violating the privacy of an individual. And if she can indeed use her powers to move medical practitioners around to suit her political pursuits, then that is dangerous. Madam Presiding Officer, her distasteful rant, which must be perceived as cussing in the House, got the full support of the members of the majority. And so she went further. She rejected the usefulness of this House by making it clear that she should not be questioned about her handling of the division over which she leads. In arrogance, she claimed that matters surrounding the rental of the Habib building should not be queried because, as she puts it, it is our rent, and mind your own business. Sadly, the posturing also received commendations by virtue of raucous thumping on the desks by her colleagues. Finally, and most sadly, she sought to shame the minority councillor, Dr. Faith B. Israel, on what she perceived to be the minority councillor's medical inability. She said, and I quote, "You so bitter that you cannot sleep, and if you want to govern, try to sleep. Try to be less bitter. Don't be doing what you're doing, because it is not going to. And if you aspire to getting a family, so you're not going to get none, because if you're bitter like that, nobody will make you sweet, far more make you a parent." End quote. Madam Presiding Officer, such a statement is unbelievable in the context of 2018.
True.
The member, by ignorantly dismissing the fact that Dr. B. Israel already has a family as she's married, attempted to provide what she feels is a plausible explanation for why the councillor is childless. More than that, she is strongly inferring that being childless must be the fault of the councillor herself, and that being childless is some great sin. We acknowledge that pekong is part of our political culture. We acknowledge that sarcasms, puns, metaphors, and other figurative devices color our political discourse unlike any other jurisdiction. We acknowledge that some of these are acceptable in the House, and some are only acceptable outside of this House. However, at no point is it ever acceptable to make jokes about someone's perceived medical inabilities. That is unethical, and it is not human. Madam Presiding Officer, women all over this country and the Tobago diaspora were hurt by the Secretary's statement. Here we have someone appointed as the Secretary for Health on the island in a sitting of the House, chastising another female about possible infertility issues. To minimize infertility to bitterness is also unacceptable. There are many women struggling to conceive and carry a child, whether single or married, and to correlate this to being bitter as someone responsible for health services on the island is unacceptable in and out of the House. The insensitivity, crassness, and apathy displayed by the Secretary contrasts.
Remember, your speaking time is up.
Sure.
Honorable members, since I would only have just received this request minutes before the sitting, I propose to rule on it at my next sitting in the House.
Introduction of bills. Motions relating to the business or sitting of the Assembly and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary. Public business. Executive Council business. Motion.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. This afternoon, Madam Presiding Officer, I rise to move the following motion. Whereas the unique environment of Tobago directly supports the livelihood of Tobagonians engaged in various activities, including farming, fishing, and tourism, and whereas formal efforts to protect our environment began as early as 1776, when the British Parliament officially declared the main ridge as a forest reserve, and whereas through a series of collaborative efforts with international, regional, and national bodies, the Tobago House of Assembly has been actively involved in preserving and protecting our environment for our present and future generations. Be it resolved that this House support the Executive Council in developing and adopting a Tobago Protected Area System Plan, and be it further resolved that pursuant to the adoption of the Tobago Protected Area System Plan, the Main Ridge Forest Reserve be officially declared as the first designated protected area, and be it further resolved that other ecologically sensitive areas be adopted on a phased basis under the proposed Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to start this discourse by first of all defining what a protected area is. And it can be defined as a geographically defined area of land, body of fresh water or sea, or combination of these, which is designated and managed through legal or other effective means. Madam Presiding Officer, a designation as a protected area does not mean that the resources are locked up, but rather that an area is chosen so that specific action can be focused on restoring or maintaining a particular feature of ecological or geographical importance to or at a favorable status. Madam Presiding Officer, in terms of the actions that are taken, we have to recognize that the Tobago House of Assembly has been actively involved in ensuring that we protect our 116 square miles of island paradise. And there have been the questions as to why now? Why is this necessary? What are we trying to do? And the answer, Madam Presiding Officer, is simple. We are trying to ensure that there is a Tobago that we can be proud of, not only today, but we want a Tobago that we can be proud of for the next 10, 20, 100 years, and until the end of time, Madam Presiding Officer, and a Tobago that our future generations can enjoy. Madam Presiding Officer, it is also important that we preserve and protect our very delicate ecological balance here in Tobago, because Trinidad and Tobago on a whole is probably the most ecologically diverse set of land masses in the Caribbean. The reality is, Madam Presiding Officer, despite several attempts under several different pieces of legislation to protect different pieces of real estate in both Trinidad and Tobago, what we have resulted in is a state of confusion at times. What we have resulted in is sometimes overlapping of responsibilities. What it has resulted in sometimes is that there are gaps. Madam Presiding Officer, the FAO would have been conducting, again under the invitation of the government and the Tobago House of Assembly in partnership with Tobago House of Assembly, the necessary research on having a protected area system plan adopted in Tobago. And the reality is, Madam Presiding Officer, we would have found that there are over 32 different pieces of legislation that speak to protection in some form or fashion of different environments. Again, as I indicated earlier, this can lead to confusion. So the purpose of having a Tobago area system, protected area system plan would be to establish an appropriate framework for the selection, legal designation, and management of our protected areas here on the island. Because it is important, Madam Presiding Officer, that we recognize that the business of Tobago, the business of protecting our real estate, cannot be left to chance. Yes, all of us have grown up, every single one of us have grown up knowing that the main ridge is a forest reserve as designated by the British Parliament. And the reason that they would have done that is that they would have recognized that the plantocracy at the time would have recognized that the area was important as a watershed, and to maintain the plantations on the island, the agrarian economy, they needed to protect this forest reserve. But, Madam Presiding Officer, the Trinidad and Tobago government, the only marine park is the Boca Reef Marine Park, which is under another piece of legislation yet again. There were even attempts previously to make it an environmentally sensitive area. But what we have again, Madam Presiding Officer, is several overlapping pieces of legislation. And I want to liken it to an education system where we have different standards all over the place. And now that we have our tertiary education system, mind you, now that an accreditation council was brought on board, we now have a standardization almost of the quality of education that is given at the tertiary level. So we have to look at the fact, Madam Presiding Officer, that having this system of protected areas for Tobago would lead to us ensuring that we protect not only the places that we know of currently, like the main ridge and Boca Reef, but there are several other areas on the island as well that we could consider as ecologically important and significant, not only to us here in Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago, but worldwide. And Madam Presiding Officer, that is just what the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment is trying to do by having the main ridge forest reserve and its surrounding areas designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Because a UNESCO World Heritage Site means that this specific area, this specific real estate is significant to be protected in the interest, the common interest of all universally. It means, Madam Presiding Officer, that we have already started taking the steps to say that we are serious about preserving our environment. And please allow me to digress, because we are seeing now an alarming amount of dumping happening here in Tobago. We are seeing an alarming amount of indiscriminate activities that negatively impact on our environment. And we have been taking the necessary steps through monitoring, the environmental police, public education with the schools, and the list goes on. But we have to look at what is fundamental. What is fundamental is that we have to really recognize that what we have is worth protecting. And by understanding that across the island, we will be in a better position to appreciate and take care of what God has given to us. This 116 square miles of island paradise should not be taken for granted by anyone. Madam Presiding Officer, imagine I was asked yesterday, if you don't, Mr. Secretary, don't you think that there are other more pressing issues to be addressed? And I said to the person, I agree that there are other pressing issues that can be addressed, but no one can tell me that preserving and protecting our environment under a uniform system is not pressing and important. Because we have a habit of saying, oh gosh, if I didn't know, and we're going through that now with the Buku Reef, where for several years the Buku Reef was a stellar attraction, and people were walking on the Buku Reef. People were taking up coral and sea fans from the Buku Reef. And now that things aren't looking good, we are saying, if I didn't know. Madam Presiding Officer, could you imagine that we have other reefs around Tobago and we choose not to protect them, and then 10, 20 years from now, all we could get up in this house and say is, oh gosh, if I didn't know. We cannot wait until it is too little, too late. There has been enough irreparable damage done to our environment, and it is time to take a structured approach, Madam Presiding Officer, an approach that is research-driven, an approach that involves all stakeholders, an approach that encourages our international partners, or an approach that encourages international funding, and an approach that encourages Tobagonians to recognize, realize that our treasure, our island, our environment needs protecting not now, but from now until the end of time. And there are several benefits that can be derived from adopting a system of protected areas. Excuse me. Of course, we look at our national priorities. We now have a new vision. And the reality is, as we look towards developing Tobago, and the Chief Secretary would have spoken about his vision for the island on numerous occasions, tourism is very important to us. And later on, my colleague, the Secretary for Tourism, Culture and Transportation would speak, so I won't go too far into it. But one of our competitive advantages here, right here in Tobago, is our environment. And we have to be sure that we are protecting it. International funders are also willing to work with us. And on Monday, Madam Presiding Officer, I'm pleased to announce that I would have handed over the instruments of appointment to the Northeast Protected Area Management Trust. And Madam Presiding Officer, this is the first time that we have fully and wholly embraced a full co-management approach to the ecological assets that we are bestowed with. So we now have all sectors of society, Madam Presiding Officer, coming together to say, this is ours. We want to protect it. We want to preserve it. And more fundamentally, Madam Presiding Officer, we can look at the fact that we can still yield the benefits, or the communities rather can still yield the benefits of these protected areas. Because we're not protecting it because we want tourists to come here, or we're not protecting it because we want other people to just say, well, wow, that's a nice forest. We are protecting it for our people, for Tobagonians. We are protecting our spaces because we recognize that these spaces are significant to us here on the island. And Madam Presiding Officer, there have already been significant public consultations. And it's interesting to note some of the areas that people want protected. Of course, in the Northeast, there are persons that want a Northeast Marine Park. There are people who even want the Lambo Beach, because it's called Warm Pool, affectionately known as Warm Pool, to be protected. And it's an interface between the beach and a wetland. There are people who want to see the Goldsboro watershed protected. And all of these areas, Madam Presiding Officer, we have the opportunity going forward, once we establish this protected area management system, this systems plan, that we can say, listen, this is the criteria. This is how we are going to go about managing. These are the stakeholders. These are the people responsible. These are the end results. And we can clearly outline the way forward. And, Madam Presiding Officer, we should see this as a groundbreaking action. And I hope that those opposite are ready and willing to support. Because if they are really serious about protecting and preserving Tobago, they need to get on board. They need to recognize that a system of this nature can yield much more benefits. Because, Madam Presiding Officer, earlier I mentioned the disturbing trend of dumping on the island. The reality is, even with the environmental police doing the work that they're doing now, they are still finding it difficult to ensure that persons are doing their bit to protect the environment. We still have yachties coming in and dumping indiscriminately in some of our waters on occasion. But, Madam Presiding Officer, under this Tobago Protected Area System Plan, as I said earlier, we can look at co-management. We can look at a system where we have the NGOs, NEST, Environment Tobago, Anthromage, and all the Eric in Charlottesville and so on, coming together to say, hey, we are part and parcel. We can bring in the village councils. We can bring in all the police youth groups. Everyone can be a part of the management of our protected areas, because this is really important to us. And again, Madam Presiding Officer, I want to emphasize that having the areas designated as protected does not mean we are locking up the resources. On the contrary, what we are doing is identifying the resources and saying these resources are worth protecting in a particular way. And there are several guidelines we need to look at when it comes to protected areas. And there are several guidelines that we would have taken into account as well when looking at protected areas, Madam Presiding Officer. We speak about representation. We want to ensure that each of the protected areas under the system should conserve all of the species, ecosystems, geomorphological and pedological elements, patterns and processes on the island. And of course, we are looking at new areas that will be recommended to fill ecosystem gaps. As I said, it will be phased introduction. Resiliency. Each of the protected areas on the system as a whole should be designed to ensure that protected elements, patterns, and processes can be sustained in the system. Of course, this would ensure that we emphasize the size of the area, the shape, the connectivity with other areas, and so on. And when my colleague, of course, the Secretary for Food Production speaks later on, he would speak about the initiatives that have taken place already to ensure that we properly demarcate the boundaries of the Main Ridge Forest Reserve. And these things have been ongoing. Redundancy, Madam Presiding Officer. The protected area system should, as much as possible, ensure that sufficient redundancy exists in the protected area system to ensure that if a catastrophic natural or anthropogenic disturbance occurs, none of the species, ecosystems, or geomorphological and pedological elements, patterns, and processes in the system will be lost. We are looking at an ecosystem-based management. So we're looking again at these protected areas, and the system will be designed to be realistic, because we have to understand that people are using these systems. People are interfacing with these protected areas on a daily basis. So we have to be very realistic in what we are doing, and that is why one of the mandates of the Northeast Protected Area Management Trust is to ensure that all times the surrounding communities benefit. Madam Presiding Officer, it goes without saying that it is time enough that we take full charge of our land space. It is time enough that we say that this is ours and this is how we want it to be preserved. There are different spaces all around the island, whether it be freshwater, whether it be seawater, terrestrial, and so on, forested areas and so on. And we now have an opportunity as a people to start determining how we want different areas to be protected and managed. And Madam Presiding Officer, I just want to indicate that under this protected area management system, we are looking at 7 different areas, 7 different levels of classification. We are looking at having scientific reserves, which would be the most, or which would be the highest form of classification. And after consultation, it will become more and more obvious that the main ridge should be classified as such. Scientific conservation reserves is the second level. National parks, national landmarks, habitat or species management reserves, protected landscapes or seascapes, sustainable use reserves will be the lowest designation. And Madam Presiding Officer, when we implement this system, when we are able to implement a protected area system for Tobago, we can be the ones, and again, we are the ones in collaboration, and I say we as a collective in Tobago here, we will be the ones to designate the different protected areas under the system. Once we keep in line with the mandate as set out under the system, we can be the ones to update our protected area system. We don't have to wait on anyone to pass any legislation to say that this is a protected area. It means, Madam Presiding Officer, that the people in Charlottesville, when they see the yachties coming in the Pirates Bay area, it means that if the Northeast Marine Park is so designated, it means that the people of Charlottesville would have a reason to say more than ever that this space is ours, and you can't just come and drop your anchor as you feel all willy-nilly. It means that the people in Bonaccord, Madam Presiding Officer, when we look at the Bonaccord Lagoon, although it's a Ramsar site, if it comes under the protected area system, the people of Bonaccord will be a major stakeholder, and they can say, hey, this is how we want this area protected. We are responsible for the management of this area. And they can ensure that we preserve that area for future generations, for those coming up in the area. And Madam Presiding Officer, I really, again, want to encourage the minority to support this initiative, to support ensuring that Tobago has its own system of protected areas, to ensure that as we move forward as an assembly, we can identify areas and we can designate them as a protected area under our Tobago Protected Area Management System, Protected Area Systems Plan. And Madam Presiding Officer, might I say that this will be a way for us to even set trends in the region. And this will be a way for us to signal to our international partners that we are truly serious as well about the protection and preservation of our environment. Because we have a gem here, Madam Presiding Officer. We have an opportunity, Madam Presiding Officer. And we are saying that now is the time for us to implement a system that says to us, we are serious about protecting our God-given gift, our 116 square miles of island paradise. Madam Presiding Officer, I so move.
Members, the question proposed is, whereas the unique environment of Tobago directly supports the livelihood of Tobagonians engaged in various activities including farming, fishing, and tourism, and whereas formal efforts to protect our environment began as early as 1776 when the British Parliament officially declared the main ridge as a forest reserve. And whereas through a series of collaborative efforts with international, regional, and national bodies, the Tobago House of Assembly has been actively involved in preserving and protecting our environment for our present and future generations. Be it resolved that this House support the Executive Council in developing and adopting a Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan. And be it further resolved that pursuant to the adoption of the Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan, the Main Ridge Forest Reserve be officially declared as the first designated protected area. And be it further resolved that other ecologically sensitive areas be adopted on a phased basis under the proposed Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The pleasure is mine this evening to stand before this honorable House, before the natives of Tobago, and ask the question, what have they been protecting? And what do they want to protect? And my mind traveled very far. Indeed, the role of any government, of any country, or any subsidiary, from the speak of a government, or any assembly, is to protect the people. So you want to protect food, protect water, protect healthcare, protect education, protect the environment, protect finances, protect jobs. Yeah, it's about protecting. While I listen to my colleague on the other side, Councillor Kwesi Devines, I must say his arguments reminded me of a time when my foreparents would go to church and they would say that the priest spoke. He spoke well. And they said he spoke in Latin, but they couldn't understand what he said. I asked myself, how many of those persons who are viewing through this YouTube, through this Facebook page, could understand those words he's using? Very verbose. Love to use words. Trying to write down some of my words, talking about environment, resilience, redundancy, redesign, Why can't you make the things simple? We're talking about protection of the environment. So his arguments were sounding persuasive, but they were very deceptive. Extremely, extremely deceptive. This is a bill that requires meticulous attention. It requires careful and diligent attention. In this bill, you could be an estate owner. Your father could leave for you 800 acres of land, wanting to develop it, and income, Mr. Counselor, income. The THA P&M-led executive looking at your land and say, this is a protected site. You can't build here. This is a protected site. I'm very mindful of the words they chose in their motion. And I'll just read a part of the motion that makes it absolutely dangerous and deceptive. They're asking us, this August House of Assembly, to vote, to give them the rights. Just give it carte blanche like that. Give it to them. Give them that discretionary power to do as they want in making places safe, protected. The Bible, there was a man who said, they give me vineyards to keep, but I didn't keep my own vineyard. That was Solomon. They want to protect new places, but the places that are now protected since 1964, that is the main ridge. Since 1973, that is the Boku. All these places, they have not protected them. They can't even protect the people. They cannot, Madam Presiding Officer, protect the people. I stand here representing the people outside of this house. And I want to let it be known, under this PNM-led executive, we had over 950 serious crimes in 2017. And instead of bringing a bill to curb that, bringing a motion to curb that, no, they have no interest in that. They want to protect the environment now. When I read the Tobago House of Assembly Act, Section 25, it gives a right to this Tobago House of Assembly, I mean both Minority Council and the Executive Council. It gives us a right to be responsible, the House, to be responsible for the formation and implementation of policy. Policy is the word. Policy in respect to matters set out in the 5th schedule. Under the 5th schedule, we find things like the environment. So the bill is one that fits in to the act. But where is the policy? Where is the policy? Where is the policy to protect the environment? You're bringing something from Google. Read them. But as I looked at you, I recognized it was read. And I looked at the speaker, Madam Presiding Officer, let me speak to you. As I looked at the speaker, Madam Presiding Officer, I saw a disconnect between his motion and his utterances. The speaker will speak and close his eyes, and he will sway. There was no commitment. There was no life. He didn't write that speech. He did not write that. He borrowed that. Maybe it's the chief secretary who gave him that speech to read. I know the man is an intelligent man. He used to be a teacher.
He unconvincing.
Right, yes, he used to be a teacher. But he seemed to be reluctant, as if he wanted to run out the house. He wanted to come back. He's sleeping, yet he's awake. It was frustrating over the last 40 minutes listening to my colleague on the other side. I must admit, very frustrating. The role of this August House, this House of Assembly, both the Executive Council, I say, and the Minority Council, to act responsible, to come up with policies for the formation and the implementation of matters in the 5th schedule. Remember, that means something. It is us. Not that you come here with some flippant, deceptive motion, not even properly done, saying to us to give you the right carte blanche so you just go and just do what you want and say protect in place. Let's do a careful examination. Let's do a careful examination. This Boko heritage site, Boko Long Beach, call it that, since 1973, before most of these people in the house were born, junior politicians, was set aside as a protected area. And in 2005, it became 2005, 2006, based on where your reader will say so, it becomes a Ramsar protected site. Internationally, it's protected. Yet, we are hearing the Prime Minister from the reading of an article saying he hear people talking about some hairy crab down there. Well, they're going to get Sanders and get the hairy crab. So much for protection, Brother Farley. So much for protection. We want to ask them, for the last 17 years, where is the Southwest sewer treatment plant? Where is the Southwest? We still have raw sewage going out into the ocean. We have a lot of the corals dying from diseases, bleaching. A lot of the runoff water is also damaging the animals and fauna in the sea. I'm concerned. For 17 years they sat down and they did nothing, hoping for Sanders to come to give them a Southwest plant, hoping for Sanders to come to give them electricity, while the rest of Tobago playing inky blinky when nighttime come in. Current gone, current empty. While I home today preparing to come here, current just goes a push. Middle of the day. I tell you, push, push. I tell you, I'm amazed, Madam Presiding Officer. I'm amazed. In this modern age, we have to contend with electricity going and coming. Broad daylight. If you want to take electricity, take it at 1 o'clock in the morning, at 2 o'clock in the morning, not during the hours of a productive day, but they want to protect the reef. Where is the Southwest water treatment plant? But they laugh. And this is why we can't put power in your hands. It's dangerous to put power in the hands of the executive. That power must be controlled. So I hear them. To give them the power to be able to protect area. That person's in Tobago with 200 acres of land in the forest, 300 acres. Some people have 100 acres, some have 20 acres. We are afraid that with the executive council, who are already on a train of their own, a group of people who are devoid of human feelings and rational, we are afraid to put that power in their hands. They may just look at a man piece of land, choice land, and say that is a protected site. You can't build there. They want to usurp the rights of tongue and country planning. No longer must tongue and country planning decide. I thought I was tongue and country planning responsibility to look at the entire area, tongue and country, and then decide and say, you know what? These are areas that you should consider for some future preservation. And there are already groups. There are already groups designed for that. Why is it that the Tobago House of Assembly must give the power to the Executive Council? That's our concern this morning, this afternoon. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to ask the question, what do they want to protect? What? I've listened to the entire speech, and I've not heard anything about what they want to protect. What do they want to protect? What? If you are in charge, as one person claimed, we would expect to protect Buku Beach by removing these old irons, and the representative is not even there. Do I clean up? I set that old iron on Buku Beach. We expect to protect that. We expect that they break down this dilapidated, waiting to kill somebody jetty, break it down flat, move it out. If you want to protect something, protect that, start with that. The scripture says, if you cannot walk with the footmen, how could you run with the horsemen? Eh? If you can't walk with the footmen, where you get this ambition from that you want to protect areas? They can't even protect the people in the country. People dying, left, right, center. They can't even protect the sick in the hospital. They can't even protect files in the hospital either. Because with the former secretary stating in the last utterances that she have access to files, it means files are no longer protected in the hospital. But they want to come and tell us, in good conscience, give them the right to protect places. No, that's not your business. It's the business of the House of Assembly. In the early preamble to this, they spoke about the fishermen, tourism, and agriculture depend on the environment. But how many fishermen there are in the country? How many? He failed to say how many fishermen are in the country. And I know the Secretary for Agriculture is looking at me. He's hoping to get some answers from me, but I'll educate you. How much fishermen in the country? How many fishes do we have in the country? Do we have flying fish in the country? They want to protect the northeast area. But have they done a careful analysis of the flying fish? about the tuna nesting that they destroy with all these drilling for oils, etc.? I want to put it for you to help you all. There are over 4,500 registered fishermen in this country. I'm telling you, that's facts. 4,500 fishermen. But you know how much practice? You know how much fishermen practice? I will wait, and I want him to answer that. I visited Roxborough on Tuesday. It's a fishing village. And there are a lot of the young men in the area. Here, a lot of the young men in the area are pulling up their boats, and in the hot sun, they are trying to repair their boats. They are having challenges with even getting the appropriate resources, that is materials, etc., to complete the task. And they do not even know how many fishes there are in the sea out there. We would like that the executive council want to protect so much the environment. They must start by telling us how many fishes we have in the sea out there. Have a fish finder. Do a check. You must know how much tuna we have in the sea. Yes, they must do that. They want to protect something. If you are to protect, you have to know what you're protecting. When I want to protect my money, I don't know how much money I have on me. If I'm missing one, I say I'm missing $1. How many dollars is? And that fall?
Yeah. I don't have much to protect.
You have to say, where my $1 is? For to protect something. When night time comes and I'm at home in my house, and I go out and I check the doors. I check 1 door, 2 door, 3 door. I say, right, I'm protecting that. Then I check on my children. 1, 2, 3. I say, right, everybody inside. I'm protecting things. Well, my wife right next to me. I don't call her, touch my wife, because my wife sleep on the same bed with me. You all who have that experience, many of you. So, Madam Presiding Officer, if you're going to protect something, you have to have numbers. You have to have data. You have to have data. They come with one place. The oldest reserve in the whole Caribbean. In fact, it may be in the whole world. The oldest designated reserve. 1964. Now, 1764. It says 1777. They don't know the date. 1764. It was designated as a reserve area. That's rainforest. They can't tell us how many trees we have inside there, how much plants we have inside there, whether the plants could be used for coal, medication, whatnot, how much reptiles we have inside, how much mammals. They have nothing, not an inkling of an idea. How many waterfalls we have inside there, how much trails, how much wild pig, where the nests. They don't know, but they want to protect. What do they want to protect? I tell you what they want to protect. Madam Presiding Officer, they want to protect special interest groups. That's what they want to protect. That's what they want to protect. Because there are already organizations around that can definitely protect those areas and are doing a fantastic job. You want to bring everything under one? Everything under one? But you can't trust their words. Because they say this today and something else tomorrow. One day you hear the secretary, the deputy secretary, or the assistant secretary, who has always been assistant secretary since he came into office, been in his seat all the time, but always an assistant secretary. He stood and he said, look, 500 persons going home. He wanted to protect that. He said, 500 persons going home. Things tough. One day he says that. Before the sun could set, Madam Presiding Officer, before the sun could set, we have the real secretary coming to say, we're protecting all the jobs. Not 5,000, not 500, all staying. Because there was numbers, there is data. There is data, Madam Presiding Officer. And once there is data, you can protect it.
Please allow him.
The minority leaders misrepresented statements by both the Assistant Secretary and myself, as mentioned in the public on multiple occasions.
Please stay focused, Minority Leader. on the current debate.
Madam Presiding Officer, I can assure you that what I've said is well documented, and I am focused. I'm speaking about protecting what you know. You cannot protect what you don't know, and that's the point I'm making. And that statement is irrefutable. It's part of my argument. It's staying focused. But that's when they just talk and close their eyes. They're always closing their eyes when they're talking and talking. They can't stay focused. But I just even sleep with my eyes open. That's how focused I am. It is said that tourism, when you talk environment, you're talking tourism. In 2000, they said tourism was responsible for 9% of GDP, national GDP. That's about $787 million, almost $1 billion. To me, that's a lot. It says a lot for us. All right? How do we want to protect areas so we encourage more and more tourists? It is said that the Buku Reef down there, in the year 2006, 40% of the arrivals to Tobago really came to do snorkeling on the Buku Reef. They visited the Buku Reef. That's data. 40%. Now, if 40% in 2006 visited the Buku Reef, then you have to look at the rise or fall of that number in the years. And I could tell you, in 2017, that number came down to 10%. They wouldn't give you that figure. People stopped going to the reef. Madam Presiding Officer, there's nothing to see on the reef but dead corals. Why? The PNM Executive Council for 17 years failed. They failed in the act to protect the reef. Everybody wants to open a business in Stobby. Everybody cooking oil, cooking this. But where does it go? Where does it go? Madam Presiding Officer, it is said that in 2007, the amount of fishes that were exported amounted to 0.6% of the GDP. We're talking figures here. On to protect the environment, you have to know what you're protecting and for what purposes you're protecting it. For what purpose? We grew up in a long-time place where we used to have a special type of place called it a buffet. And in the buffet, you have special glass and glasses and cups, etc. So when person would come to your house, person of good standing like yourself, honorable presiding officer, not like my councillor friend, QC, he had to drink from a bounce up cup. If you came by my residence, if you came to my residence long time, my mother would say to me, in the dignified voice, "What's that? Go to the buffet and get one of those shiny glass for the presiding officer. You are dignified, woman of prominence, woman of distinction, woman of refinement. That's who you are." As I'm saying to you, what happened? It was protected. It was protected for a particular purpose. She knew what she was doing. The bounce up cup, in our milk cup, let's go question them guys when they come. Give them guys a cup. They don't protect nothing from them guys. We are saying if they want to protect something, what is the purpose? What is the purpose they want to protect? Speyside, what is the purpose? It must be for tourism. It must be as a nesting station for fishes. It must be for other reasons. Say that. Say what policies you have. And if we stick to the script, as my colleague is saying across here, they say they follow a code last time. They say they follow a code. And that's what they say they follow a code. That's what they say. They say they follow a code. We don't follow no code on this side except the code of the people. We want to find out, Madam Presiding Officer, what are they protecting? They came with no data. Big words, talking with the eye closed and drifting, as if you want to confuse people in the house here today. No substance. No substance. The Buku Reef is about 650 hectares, they say. And let me switch from that. I want to go to a place called Speyside. In 2000, the PNM executive set aside Speyside to become a marine park. Today is 2018, and Speyside is still not a marine park yet. You happen to be the representative for the area that could tell me that. There's no marine park. Let me leave that. Let me come to a place called Little Tobago now. They bought an island up there called Good Island in front of Little Tobago. How much money are you going to pay for that? Before they send me the privileges. Millions are spent for a house, one little Perry house, little house at the Perry, on Good Island. Big money. And the house is rotting down right now. Not even protecting that. Bats live in the house. Gargoyles live in the house. And if for some lekato, I would have said zombie live in the house too. That's what they do with the money. A natural place, Tobago Good Island. Behind that island, about less than a mile away, is a bigger island that was protected since 1923. That was protected. It's the second oldest protected place in Tobago. Tobago, at Little Tobago. They don't even know that. They don't have those statistics. I don't wonder why they didn't have staff. In 1923, Madam Presiding Officer, there was a man who said, you know what? I want to have a place protected. I could mind some birds, etc., and some animals. And that place was Little Tobago. From since then, he went to Papua New Guinea. He brought back some special birds that were dying out. We call them bird of paradise, found on the 25 cents long time. I still believe they're only 5 cents now. And those birds were there in the Little Tobago. Up until, I want to give you a little more facts on that day. The last records were in 1958 when they checked on those birds. Those birds were there in 1958 and they checked the numbers. But in 1963, after the Hurricane Flora passed, I understand why they couldn't quote those statistics. They weren't born yet. In 1963, after the hurricane passed, those birds were no more. Buried, gone, and gone with the wind, forgotten. Like an old Western movie. You know what? The PNM was in charge then in Trinidad. They did nothing to replenish the supply of birds here in Tobago.
Minority Leader, you have 3 minutes.
Madam Presiding Officer, based on the time I checked, I started at 40 to 40.
Minority Leader, you have 3 minutes.
I'm checking my time. Madam Presiding Officer, so that island is without any birds. The fauna and flora on that island is not known. The jetty is broken down. There is no restroom on the island. Persons who are wheelchair bound or differently able cannot have proper access to the island. Where are we going? That is a protected site. They have not protected that over the last 17 years. But they want us to give them permission. Permission so they could do what they want, carte blanche, and lick up Tobago. When man looking to build, tell man that, hey, it's that protected site, you can't build it. You forget that. So now come to St. Giles Island, another protected area. A place where there are said to be a few reptiles living on it, a few birds living on it, a protected site. Have they ever done the check to see the kind of plants we have there, the name of the plants, the type of animals, the name of the animals, etc.? Why haven't they done that? And if they do, where are the scientific students on the island that are doing research to say, well, look, this can be used for medication or not? So as I wrap up, I want to say that the Minority Council wishes that the motion be amended to read in the first resolve. In the first resolve of the resolution, we are asking to replace it, to remove it, the first resolve. Remove the first resolve and replace it with, be it resolved that this House vote on a committee comprising both the Executive and Minority Council to have oversight and direction over the development and adoption of a Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan. We're talking that. We are saying that we want it to be replaced with that. The first resolve, let them remove it. And let them say, be it resolved that this House vote on a committee.
Leader, your speaking time is up. If you wish for it to be extended, it can be extended.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that the speaking time of the honourable member be extended by a further 10 minutes.
Members, the question is that the speaking time for the honourable member be extended by a further 10 minutes. All in favour?
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it. Member, your speaking time has been extended by 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Take my time. So I will now take my time within 10 minutes and state our position for clarity. Before us is this motion that is very deceptive. That starts off by saying, whereas the unique environment of Tobago directly supports the livelihood of Tobagonians engaged in various activities, include farming, fishing, and tourism. And whereas formal efforts to protect our environment began as early as 1776, when the British Parliament officially declared the Main Ridge a forest reserve. And it says here further, and whereas a series of collaborative efforts with international, regional, and national bodies, the Tobago House of Assembly has been actively involved in preserving and protecting our environment for our present and future generations. We, the Minority Council, we are saying that we want this that we are about to read now be removed, where they are stating, be it resolved that this House support the Executive Council in developing and adopting a Tobago Protected Area System. We are saying no to that. Madam Presiding Officer, we are saying no to that. We will not delegate any power to the Executive Council to just do as they want, create protected areas as they want. I mean, what is that? What we want to replace that with is, be it resolved that this House votes on a committee comprising both the Executive and the Minority Council to have oversight and direction over the development and adoption of a Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan. It means that both Minority and Executive will come together, and we, on behalf of the people of Tobago, we will have oversight and direction over the development and the adoption of the Tobago Protected Area System. That's how we formulate policies. We will not turn our back on this issue and allow them to do as they want, because I know how this thing will end up. A lot of persons who were looking to develop their lands will be told that is a protected area. You cannot develop your land there. That's what they do. That's what they do.
Presiding officer, no point of order. The minority leader continues to cast aspersions on land grabbing by Tobago House of Assembly, imputing improper motives. And I would like him to please rule that he please desist.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Justice is balanced in this House. I've witnessed that. The scale is not tipping, and it certainly isn't blind. While some people love to give recitals with their eyes half closed, justice is fully awake. I thank God for this House.
Minority Leader, get back on track, please. Your time is limited.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And so in my summation this afternoon, I want to say that indeed there are areas of Tobago that needs protecting, new areas. New areas are being discovered day after day. But there are some old areas that we have abandoned. Areas like St. Giles Island, areas like Little Tobago, areas like the rainforest, areas like the Buku Reef, and all the wetlands throughout Tobago. Even Argyle wetlands are not being protected also too. We are saying, for us to protect those wetlands, let us work together. We are pledging our support to the Executive Council on that side. Let us work together to identify those areas. And let's come up with the right type of policies, have oversight into the formation and adoption of these plans. So at the end of the day, Tobago will be balanced. Madam Presiding Officer, I thank you this afternoon for allowing me.
Assemblyman Hayden Spencer, Assemblyman for Belgarden, Goodwood.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to thank the Minority Leader for so far supporting the motion as laid. Yes, all his conversations were indicating that he is in agreement that at this time it is necessary for the Tobago House of Assembly to move into this direction of a designated protected areas plan. Yes, thank you. Madam Presiding Officer, I take this opportunity with pleasure in contributing to this motion as it's been tabled today, especially given my own portfolio as Secretary with the responsibility for food production, forestry, and fisheries. Madam Presiding Officer, in the area of forestry, contrary to the minorities' leaders' belief, the area of forestry is a highly technical area and therefore should not be politicized. In other words, the motion as outlined, while using the Mainridge Forest Reserve as initial focal point, resolved that other ecologically sensitive areas in Tobago will also be adopted on a phased basis. Madam Presiding Officer, I must commend the technical officers in the Division of Food Production, Forestry and Fisheries in the forestry area with the work that they would have been conducting over the past years in conjunction with entities such as the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, in conducting from 2015 a wildlife survey in the Marine Park area. Madam Presiding Officer, sorry, not Marine Park, in the Mainridge Forest Reserve area. Madam Presiding Officer, to date, 3 wildlife surveys would have been conducted, and we are looking at starting up the 4th wildlife survey in that area to actually indicate, to capture the data as to our wildlife in that Mainridge Forest area. We would have already started work on the trails into that wildlife area, into that area. Also, we would have started surveying the boundaries of that wildlife area. Madam Presiding Officer, what the designation of protected area simply means, contrary to what the minority leader is purporting. It's simple. One may, by listening to him, you will believe that when an area is designated a protected area, that it prevents economic activities and economic development. This is not the case in a forest reserve such as ours. What it does, it's a mechanism that you put in place to control the economic development. For example, in Tobago, we have 2 seasons as it relates to wildlife. A hunting season we close and open hunting season. What the committee may find when the necessary data is completed and provided, that in that area, we may have to do a legislation that says, listen, no hunting in that area, period, to maintain what we have there. Because as we know, worldwide, that the island depends on its tourism product. And if you are making trails into the Mainridge Forest Reserve, you will have exotic trees and so on. So there are people worldwide that will come to do bird watching, take pictures, animal watching. Now, we in Tobago, we know ourselves, we like wild meat. All of us love wild meat. We love to cook wild meat. Yes, we do. And the close and the opening of the hunting season, we are well aware that at this present time, we have hunters that are hunting in the Mainridge Forest Reserve. And therefore, that plan will indicate to Tobagonians, listen, you can, in other words, instead of hunting the wild meat and cooking it out, you can become an entrepreneur in maybe a tour guide, in taking tourists to the destination and identifying where the wildlife areas are, you know, and so on. So it is not that we want to completely eradicate activities in those areas, but to set guidelines. For example, in food production, agriculture activities. If we are to maintain our ecosystem there, what type of chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, weedicides are to be used in these areas? And this is where policies must be formulated to utilize. So, Madam Presiding Officer, the information was already given that this forest reserve was declared 242 years ago. And as the minority leader would have really highlighted, which is what I have before me also, that yes, although it was declared, there was not a system put in place to protect it. And this is what this present administration is seeking to do, to protect the area that was declared a site. Madam Presiding Officer, we also as humans, we benefit a whole lot. Our survival as humans, we benefit a whole lot from the forest reserve area. For example, some of the positive benefits that humans receive from a good forest reserve area. It mitigates the climate, especially in these times of climate change. Madam Presiding Officer, our forest reserve absorb harmful greenhouse gases. Madam Presiding Officer, protecting the watershed and reducing or slowing down the normal erosion of reach.
Member, would you give way?
No, Madam Presiding Officer. I'm on a very technical, all right? Madam Presiding Officer, I will not give way.
Okay, Minority Leader. Have a seat. He has refused to give way. Minority Leader, two of you can. The book also says two of you cannot be on your feet at the same time. If the member has refused to give way, you need to allow. You have not been approved to get up and read anything. Member, can you continue?
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, interestingly, the minority leader would have sat there and he went to Togo, he went to Venezuela. He strayed away from actually what is the issue that this motion is really about. And he was left alone. You were left alone. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I beg your indulgence. In areas where technical information is to be given to the public, I would like to refer to my notes.
Are you asking me permission to refer
Yes,
to your
Madam
notes?
Presiding
You have that
Officer,
permission.
Thank you very much. Providing food and medicines, Madam Presiding Officer. Serving as a buffer in natural disasters such as flood and rainfall. Madam Presiding Officer, it is recorded in the world that forest reserve have benefit over 100 and, sorry, Madam Presiding Officer, let me rephrase that. See how important it is to give accurate data. Madam Presiding Officer, it provides benefits toward, the forest provide benefits towards survival of human beings, it has been reported that between 1990 and 2015, an estimated 129 million hectares of forests have been lost for a variety of reasons. Madam Presiding Officer, we at the Tobago House of Assembly, we are taking the initiative now to prevent, preserve, and conserve our forest area so that we do not fall into this bracket. Madam Presiding Officer, I now wish to draw your attention to our tropical reef systems around the island. This includes the Northeast Tobago Marine Park Protected Area, which covers an estimated 59,280 hectares and extend along the entire coastline strip from Roxburgh on the northeast coast, north to Polotavere, and on the northwest coast, extending towards 6 nautical miles towards the sea. Madam Presiding Officer, in that area you will find there are several coral reefs around Little Tobago, Goat Island, the numerous rocks out there like the Sisters, the Brothers, extending all the way down, and included in that area also is the Kings Bay, Man of War Bay, and Bloody Bay. Madam Presiding Officer, what we find happening in these areas is that it's an enormous piece of natural real estate owned by the Tobago House of Assembly. Now, the Protected Area System Plan is not to say to the users of the marine space and also the fisher folk that listen, you cannot fish in this area or you cannot carry out your tours and your sightseeing in this area. What we have to do, Madam Presiding Officer, is to control the manner in which these activities are being carried out. For example, in some countries, Madam Presiding Officer, what would have transpired, legislation would have been put in place, for example, for the fisher folks, based on certain species of fish where you cannot catch these fish under a particular weight. In other words, these fish will be considered as babe, immature. So there's a system called catch and release. So you catch, you weigh, you catch, you measure. It does not reach up to the required standard, and you release back into the wild. Now, we in Tobago, we would have seen a problem. And the officers at the Marine Resource and Fisheries Department have been working feverishly to educate the fisher folk of Tobago as it relates to one of our prize fish, which we call the dolphin, the mahi-mahi. And we as consumers, we find it quite easy to say, give me that small dolphin. The fishermen call it punya case dolphin. Madam Presiding Officer, it was brought to my information, it was brought to my attention that what we call a punya case dolphin that we so like to purchase is a dolphin that is only 3 months old. So it's a babe. And therefore, if we do not put legislation in place to say, listen, a fish that size, you do not catch it, because the next coming season, you would not be getting the amount of mature fish that you will need in the next coming season, because you would have caught the babes that are supposed to grow into that next season. So with this type of information and data that's already been collected, it is indicating that we should, Madam Presiding Officer, support this motion and declare these areas designated protected area. Madam Presiding Officer, in order for us to take an overarching view of why we should go down this road, if we look at the Buku Reef complex, it has been reported that the Buku Reef complex on an annual basis receive over 45,000 visitors, whether it's be local, regional, or international. That's the data that is present. Madam Presiding Officer, it's also been estimated that the Buku Reef alone has generated between 7 to 8.8 million US dollars annually into our economy in Tobago. So therefore, Madam Presiding Officer, there is an area that we can reflect to that where systems have been put in place to utilize and control socio-economic development in Tobago. And therefore, there is a pattern there to follow. So, in pursuit, we can look back, see over the last 45 years our experiences and how we move forward treating with the Buku Reef. For example, Madam Presiding Officer, the establishment of a Buku Reef Marine Park Preservation and Enhancement Act of 1973, which guided entry and operations in the Marine Park in 1973. Madam Presiding Officer, the development of a Buku Reef management plan by the Institute of Marine Affairs in 1995 as a guide to the management of the resources and general operations within the reef complex. Madam Presiding Officer, the designation of the Buku Reef and Bonaccord complex as a site number 496 in 2005 under the Convention of Wetlands, the Ramsar Convention. Madam Presiding Officer, in 2005 again, the Environmental Management Agency initiated the process of declaring the Buku Reef Marine Park as an environmentally sensitive area under the Environment Management Act of 2000. The founding of the Buku Reef Management Committee in 2000 to fast-track the implementation requirements of this environmentally sensitive act. So, Madam Presiding Officer, what we are seeing is that there's a format already set there. And if we could so be guided as in the implementing of this protected area northeast, we have history that we can refer to. Madam Presiding Officer, also in the area of food production, let me also indicate that the Division of Food Production, Forestry and Fisheries would have taken cognizance of good agricultural practices and would have formulated a strategic plan to deal with proper and appropriate clearing, preparation of lands for agriculture purposes. We would have started training programs in educating our farmers on the judicious use of chemicals, pesticide, weedicide, insecticide. We would have worked alongside with the apiaries industry, and we would have worked again with the fisher folk of Tobago, training in management and conservation of our fish stock, among other factors. Madam Presiding Officer, as I close, Trinidad and Tobago would have assert this project guided by a new national protected area and forestry policy adopted in 2013 and forms part of our debate today. Madam Presiding Officer, what I want to end by saying to all of Tobago is that while we maintain our mantra of keeping Tobago clean, green, safe, and serene, these are some of the initiatives and programs that we must put in place as an assembly to treat with our natural resources in Tobago and our protected areas. Madam Presiding Officer, I fully support this motion as tabled in the House today. I thank you.
Councillor Dr. Faith B. Israel.
Good afternoon, Madam Presiding Officer, members of the House, and to the few visitors with us today. Madam Presiding Officer, this is one day where I will be extremely short. Probably the only day that I will be extremely short. Because I have read the motion, and I think that in principle, it is trying to do something that is important for Tobago and important for Tobagonians. This has nothing to do with either of you. This is for Tobago. Before you continue thumping, though, I would like to mention, just to have on record, that even though this administration has continually spoken about doing things that are environmentally friendly, when the rubber actually hits the road, or when you see what actually has been done and what continues to be done, you would see that the actions are contrary to what has been promised. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration over the last, how many, 16, 17 years now, has been known for starting projects without the necessary environmental clearances that are needed. And even when those environmental clearances have been garnered, probably coaxed, we can all see that they were not in the best interest of the environment, and they were not in the best interest of Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, I will raise two specific examples, and I'll speak of those two only. We have the construction on the seafront at both Castara and Charlottesville. Both of them, prime examples of us, no, I am not taking any responsibility for this, of you all saying that you want to be environmentally friendly, environmentally responsible, but when the rubber hits the road, there is proof that you have lied to the people. Madam Presiding Officer, I used to frequently go to Castara. Madam Presiding Officer, I used to frequently go to Castara. And after missing for a period, I remember driving onto the beach, making that turn towards the beach, and being confronted by the monstrosity that is whatever that thing is being constructed on the beachfront in Castara, blocking one of the most beautiful sceneries in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, honestly, when I saw it, I was surprised because I heard about it. I heard that the villagers were complaining about it. I saw the reports on television, but it's one thing to hear about it, and it's another thing to actually see it for yourself. Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I also spoke to some of the villagers in Castara, and they mentioned that even though they complained about the building, and they complained about how it was being constructed, and they complained about the fact that it was ruining the beachfront, that they were promised that the building would be covered with a material that makes it fit in with the scenery a little better. That is yet to happen. As a matter of fact, they were equally surprised when they saw that paint was simply being placed on the building, showing that there was no intention to cover it with anything more beautiful than the concrete. Madam Presiding Officer, this, and my political leader mentioned it, the PNM-led administration is led by a man who very callously, very, very callously said that, in essence, he doesn't care about the hairy crab in the Boko area. When all of the environmentalists, when all of the people who were concerned about whether that is where Sandals was going to be built or not, were throwing up their arms and saying, you know, this is a very important area, this is a Ramsar area, and it needs to be protected. And when the man who leads that political party got up and said in a meeting that he does not care about the hairy crab, very much like the last sitting, those who were seated around thumped their desks and agreed with the plans as outlined there. As I said at the beginning, Madam Presiding Officer, I'm going to be very short. We agree that the Tobago space needs to be protected. In fact, there were discussions about all of the laws and so forth, that needs to be done in a very comprehensive, cohesive manner to ensure that all of the misinterpretations and all of the conflicts are not in place. And we need to do that at all costs. But, Madam Presiding Officer, as was suggested, and because we have in Tobago 17 years of history to learn from, because we have seen that even though something is said, even publicly, when it comes to really implementing it, what is said and what is done is very different. I will reiterate the call of my political leader, and this is a simple request. We are asking that one little paragraph in the entire motion be modified so that when the decisions are made, it is made by the Executive Council in collaboration with the Minority Council. That's all we're asking for. That's not that difficult. And if your intentions are really honest, and if your intentions are really true, that simple request can be honored, and we will be very happy, probably for the first time since we've been sitting here, to all agree on something, because it is what is best for the people of Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, I thank you.
It has come to my attention that Councillor Nadine Stewart-Phillips has been injured and would not be able to present this afternoon, and so we will go directly to Assemblyman Farley Augustine, representative for Palatuvia Speyside Lansbury.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, I think that those opposite might, perhaps it's a little bit of shock why they are seemingly behaving surprised or unresponsive to us being magnanimous, to use a word from my good friend from Backlet, Mount St. George. But I want to take this from a very personal perspective. Not because I am narcissistic, but because I live in the most beautiful part of the island, and I can argue without fear of losing that argument that my electoral district is the most naturally beautiful of all electoral districts. And I believe people will agree with that. And what we own, it doesn't belong to us alone, but it belongs to all of Tobago. And being a resident in the area, we see ourselves, I could say for a fact that we see ourselves as stewards of that which belongs to all of this island. I also want to take this from the perspective of sustainable development, which is important, because sustainable development, more or less, is developing in a way that tomorrow's generation, 15 years down the road even, can still develop using the resources and the methods that we have. And so we have to be always guarded about how we should chart our development. When the Tobago House of Assembly first pushed the mantra of clean, green, safe, and serene, I was hoping, I wasn't in the politics then, but I was hoping for an even larger push in terms of environmental consciousness, in terms of how we manage our tourism sector especially, in terms of ensuring that we harness our natural resources in a more environmentally friendly manner. I have seen since then that many times we talk about sustainable development, many times we talk about safeguarding the environment, as this motion does, and then we do things far contrary to the fact. The speaker before me spoke about some of them. At my first meeting with the CTDA and that's within 1 week of being inaugurated. That's the Castara Tourism Development Agency. Yes, that's my first meeting with them as a group. You know what they spoke about? They spoke about the building on the beach, and that they were promised that it should be clad in wood. So I felt I needed to mention that because I heard this snickering and the whispering when Dr. Israel mentioned it. And I am sure my good friend, Councillor Devines, know folks from that committee that he could call and WhatsApp to ask if that is indeed the case. But this motion, we agree. We agree in principle is a good motion. We agree that the intention is good. But we also note that oftentimes the road to hell is paved with very good intentions. And so we have to safeguard ourselves in that regard. I want to go straight to the amendment we are proposing. And let me tell you why we're proposing this amendment. We are proposing that we ask the executive and the minority councils to create a committee that should act as an oversight for the development and adoption of the Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan. Here's why. Number one, if we are going to create a system of parks, for example, if we are going to create a registry of parks, for example, if we are going to go about demarcating certain areas and making them ultra-protected areas, then we feel that a committee of this House should have that oversight, as opposed to just a committee outside or external of this House. Number two, we also feel strongly that if in Tobago we are going to champion the cause of the environment, then why not let us be novel? Why not let us be the first House in the Commonwealth to have a parliamentary committee specially dedicated to these environmental issues? That in itself sends a very strong message to all of Tobago that, look, we are more serious than coming here, passing motions that sound nice, and then we don't get much out of it. I remembered when the former secretary, he was secretary at the time for agriculture and the environment, former member of this House, Hilton Sandy, spoke extensively about creating that marine park in the Speyside area. It was passed here. I know it was to go to Trinidad for Cabinet to do their final doing. It still has not happened. But when that happened, a group of us in Speyside, we ran and we formed the Speyside Eco Marine Park Rangers, and we started doing training, we started doing reef monitoring for free, we started doing education programs, we even got a Jeff small fund from the UN. We did documentaries, infomercials, we had stuff on the radio, and we did all of this, including taking our own monies and flying to St. Lucia to look at how their marine park operates, hoping that, yes, this will happen, hoping that when this happens, it will result in a far larger fish take for fishermen. We will have larger in terms of quantity and larger in terms of quality of the fish. And guess what? Nothing has happened. And so how do we ensure that this time, this is not just about forming a committee somewhere to manage some plan somewhere, and 10 years from now, nothing happens. 10 years from now, people are just indiscriminately going into the rainforest and just hunting and doing all manner of madness. In fact, over the Carnival weekend, while my colleagues on both sides, some of my colleagues on both sides were enjoying the Carnival experience, I was out camping in Bloody Bay and walking on trails in the rainforest. And I could remember at one point when we got back onto the main road, the tour guide pointed to a precipice. And when I went and I looked, my heart dropped to see the amount of garbage just dumped over there. And it's dumped in a place that is almost treacherous. I don't know how we will even get this stuff up out of there. And it shows that there's a need for us to awaken a consciousness about the environment and for us to do more to protect what we have. And that clearly the systems we do have are not working as efficiently as they should. And so it begs the question of where are our forest rangers? How do they work? I heard about litter wardens earlier. How effective is that program? How do we get them to be even more effective? And then, Madam Presiding Officer, we also saw recently the development of the Northeast Management Trust Board. And I see that this board is meant to look at the northeastern part of Tobago, which of course includes our main rainforest, and to ensure that the area is protected. Now, my only problem with that committee is that I wish, and I'll put it on record for the secretary with responsibility to note it and perhaps take it to exec council and do something about it. I would have loved to see someone from Bloody Bay on that committee. I note happily that Mr. Taylor from Castara is on that committee, but I would have loved to see someone from Bloody Bay there, simply because when the people involved, when the people who live closest to the issue are involved, then they tend to direct these committees along the right path. Now, the final thing I want to add is that there should be nothing to fear about there being a committee, including both sides, looking at these environmental issues and treating with the Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan. There's no harm in that. Yes, we have the Northeast Management Trust Board, but there is no harm in us having that committee. In fact, it sends an even more powerful message that we are doing more than just passing motions in the House, but that we are willing to ourselves give up a little bit more of our time, even if that time is once a month or once every 2 months, to meet as a committee and to oversee this thing and to give it some oversight. Because without that, we are afraid that one, that nothing could happen, or two, abuses can happen. And so we have to ensure that this happens. We have to ensure that this does not go the way of the Speyside Marine Park that was supposed to happen. We have to ensure that this does not go the way of Goat Island. We just have it there rusting away. We have to ensure that this doesn't go the way of so many of our other areas that should be protected and treated with dignity and respect by us all getting involved in a more direct way. And I hope that those opposites could understand how magnanimous we are. Assemblyman Jack, I am hoping that those opposites could understand how ready we are to work with them on this, because we are. We are ready to work with them on this. And we look forward to the amendment being passed, and we look forward to all of us sitting together and working this out piece by piece and ensuring that this beautiful island we call Tobago remains protected. Thank you.
Councillor Kwesi Devines.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And I'm happy that the minority leader took the opportunity to get back into the House so I could give him some advice. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Do twice the amount of listening than you do talking. And the reality is, Madam Presiding Officer, I would have gone into significant depth on trying to let the minority leader understand what it is we are trying to protect. And for him to even ask that question means that he clearly was not listening. Or it may mean that, as he said, he does not understand. And if you don't understand, we can have tutorials afterwards. I have no problem. My experience as a teacher, I can definitely teach him a thing or two. But Madam Presiding Officer, the reality is what the minority missed again is that there has already been significant public consultation. As a matter of fact, while you were busy swimming, we were consulting. There was an occasion recently where I was even in Charlottesville for a public consultation hosted by the people at FAO. And I was happy to see all of the communities from Castara, across the Space side, all the way up to Charlottesville, there in the library at Charlottesville. The member for Parliament for Tobago East was there. We all took our time to be there, and I was sitting and hoping and waiting that I would have seen the area representative, Mr. Augustine, there, but he wasn't. And I'm wondering, we are talking about you want to be part of a committee, fine. Committees that the minority leader would have said time and time again he's fed up of. They don't want to be part of a code of conduct committee. They don't want to be part of any committee to ensure that we have proper transportation arrangements in place. They don't want to be part of committees, and all of a sudden, they want to be part of a committee. What I want to say, yeah, previous, yeah. So, Madam Presiding Officer, the reality is there has been significant and widespread public consultation already. As a matter of fact, surveys will have been done and show that people, especially in Northeast Tobago, Speyside in particular, and I'm happy that the Assemblyman opposite mentioned it, and though it's disappointing that the Speyside Marine Park did not materialize, we are now looking forward to the designation of the Northeast Marine Park. And that is what the public consultation in Charlottesville was about. What should the boundaries be? And I don't want anyone to go away with the false impression that it's just the Assembly picking up tomorrow and say, well, we want to protect Market Square, and Market Square we're going to designate as a protected area. That is not how it's done. A system being put in place, and again, we've had the public consultation, we've had an international partner on board through the FAO. There's the IFPAM committee, the Integrated Forest and Protected Area Management Committee, which is a co-management committee that includes NGOs from the southwestern tip all the way to the northeastern tip. And they were the ones who came up with the concept to say, hey, let us start based on our lessons that we have learned, based on our experiences, based on the things that went well, based on the things that did not go so well. Let us start with this Northeast Tobago Protected Area Management Trust. And that is how the trust was formed. And I'm happy again that the minority assemblyman is paying attention. Yes, we have the president of the Castara Tourism Development Association as the deputy chairman of the Northeast Protected Area Trust, because we recognize the importance of co-management. And again, it's not a political football, as Mr. Spencer would have said. Let's not take it that anybody in this house wants control. The environment is all of Tobago's business. It's everybody's business. So don't feel that we need to grab it up and form a committee of this house. No, that is not the approach. We have independent consultants on the ground. We have technical experts. We have the NGOs. We have the special interest groups. We have the community groups. Let them come together. Let them decide what we should do. Those are the people, the Tobagonians, are the ones to decide where we go from here, where we should protect, and where we should start protecting more, and how we should protect it. So don't let us get myopic. Don't let us get arrogant and believe that it's about us having control, or we should have control in this house. That's not the way forward. And let me just clarify some misinformation again. A house was not bought on Goat Island. The island was purchased for the benefit of preserving the reef that exists there. It's a shelter piece of real estate. So the island was not bought because we want a house, a fancy house as a getaway island. That is not the reason that the piece of property was bought. So let us not go giving the wrong impression. St. Giles that we have has the largest frigate bird population in this part of the world. And those are things and reasons why we should protect. And yes, there are different types of protection, and that's why we want to say, hey, let us have one uniform system of protection. And we are not going to be the ones to say, protect A or B or C or D. Let us work together with communities to have them do the consultation, make the proposals, follow the guidelines, the technical specifications, and let's look at how we can go forward. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I really want us to understand the significance, and I'm happy that in principle the minority is saying yes to this motion, because they do understand finally that we are working significant details, significant policies, significant exercises to ensure that we can put in place different systems of managing our Tobago space. I wish the minority had come on board when we said let's start reducing noise pollution in Tobago. And I'm happy to report to this House that a particular establishment that was notorious for noise pollution in the Southwest has been given strict guidelines by a magistrate, because the same environmental police officers that the minority assemblyman is imputing not doing a good enough job were on spot to get the records, to go to the courthouse, make every single appearance and representation to ensure that the people of Southwest Tobago can have some sort of reprieve. So I must say commendations to the environmental police right here in Tobago. We are not sleeping on the job. We are doing what is necessary to protect our land space, to protect our environment. And Madam Presiding Officer, I don't believe that there's too much reason again to go on, but because Councillor Nadine Stewart Phillips would have missed her presentation, it would be remiss of me again not to mention that we have to take special interest in how we preserve our environment for us here in Tobago first and foremost, so that other persons, tourists and otherwise, can also enjoy our environment and all that Tobago has to offer. So, Madam Presiding Officer, as we rest this debate, we end this debate, I want to emphasize that it is not about politicizing the environment. We cannot want to grab and hold and say, let us do this. That is not the way forward. The way forward is wide-reaching consultation with the public. And I would encourage members of the minority. I would have seen the minority councillor taking part in some beach cleanups. That's a good thing. Bring the youth group that you're affiliated with to the public consultation. I've seen the minority assemblyman previously working with groups in Speyside. Ensure that you are there at the consultation so that we can all work, whether it is PNM, PDB, or whoever you want to call yourself today or tomorrow. We are ensuring that there's proper wide-reaching consultation with the communities, the special interest groups, the technocrats, the NGOs, and everyone. And that is the approach we are taking with the Northeast Tobago Protected Area Management Trust, that we have brought together all sectors of society, Madam Presiding Officer. The NGOs, the business sector, and of course, the government sector. So, Madam Presiding Officer, at this point in time, I don't believe that I need to oversell what we are trying to achieve, but I just want to say that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Having a system of this nature is just a tip of the iceberg. Putting these steps in place is just the beginning. We have to start encouraging a different type of behavior in our communities, a different type of behavior that is about responsibility. Because it's always easy to point fingers and say, well, who going to clean this up? And the minority assemblyman spoke about garbage being thrown over a precipice. I am pretty sure Mr. Jack didn't throw it there, or Assemblyman Spencer didn't throw it there. And I'm hoping that Assemblyman Augustine didn't throw it there either. So, but it means that somebody did throw it there. And we have to work together to ensure that we modify these types of behavior and that we start putting co-management arrangements in place so that persons really start to grasp the significance of the environment. And one other thing I want to clarify before we wrap up. Under the 7 different proposed classifications, there are different levels of protection. And I don't want the minority, especially the minority leader, to go outside and tell people that the THA is land grabbing, because you know that persons in here can be sensationalists. We have to be very responsible in how we approach this particular issue. And I really am happy that the minority is finally trying to get on board instead of trying to disrupt and instead of trying to mislead, because we were doing some similar exercises with the quarry, and the minority went about to say that we were privatizing the quarry and sending persons home, and then still trying to come back and tell me that you want to work with me. So I'm happy that you are beginning to see the light on the other side. I continue to make myself available to the minority for consultation as well. We are open for discussion on this side because we want the best for Tobago. So, Madam Presiding Officer, at this time, I do rest.
Members, before we put the question, we have an amendment before us. And the recommendation is to go to the section of be it resolved and remove the following. Be it resolved that this House support the Executive Council in developing and adopting a Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan, and replace with be it resolved that this House vote on a committee comprising both the Executive and Minority Council to have oversight and direction over the development and adoption of a Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All against the amendment, say nay. Nay. Division.
Councillor Kwesi Devines.
Nay.
Secretary Joel Jack.
Nay.
Secretary Hayden Spencer. Secretary Joe Mopit. Secretary Clarence Jacob. Assistant Secretary Sheldon Cunningham. Assistant Secretary Mauricia Osman. Assemblyman Farley Augustine.
Aye.
Minority Leader Watson Duke.
Aye.
Councillor Faith Lee Israel. Aye. 6, 4, 3 against. Sorry. 7, 4, 3 against. Sorry.
The amendment will not be carried. Members, the question now put is, whereas the unique environment of Tobago directly supports the livelihood of Tobagonians engaged in various activities, including farming, fishing, and tourism. And whereas formal efforts to protect our environment began as early as 1776 when the British Parliament officially declared the main ridge as a forest reserve. And whereas through a series of collaborative efforts with international, regional, and national bodies, the Tobago House of Assembly has been actively involved in preserving and protecting our environment for present and future generations. Be it resolved that this House support the Executive Council in developing and adopting a Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan. And be it further resolved that pursuant to the adoption of the Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan, the Main Ridge Forest Reserve be officially declared as the first designated protected area. And be it further resolved that other ecologically sensitive areas be adopted on a phased basis under the proposed Tobago Protected Area Systems Plan. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All against? Nay. Any persons abstaining? The ayes have it. The motion is now carried.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I move that this House stand adjourned to a date to be fixed.
Members, the question put is that the House now stand adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? The House stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.